Good afternoon and welcome to Bill's Seadoo Midlife Crisis. And today I would like to do a bit of a wrap-up video on my boat, my Seadoo Challenger 180 that I have been working on for about a year, doing all sorts of small projects. You know, I'm not a mechanic. I bought this boat knowing absolutely nothing about it. And through YouTube and a lot of kind of enthusiasm, I've learned a fair bit about the motor, about the hull, about gel coat, about jet pumps, about how to drive these things, about how they work. And I've really gotten into it. So I made a ton of videos, or at least I shot a bunch of video, and it was, the idea was they were going to be instructional how-to videos. And to be honest with you, after I looked at all the footage, they weren't that good. Like, the footage that I shot wasn't that good. What I was doing was cool, but the how-to part wasn't that good. So what I thought I would do instead is make a video of the results and show you what I did, not how I did it, and try to explain a little bit that way. I have lots of videos, so hopefully I'll be able to throw in some clips from other things that I was doing and that I did along the way and show you, and you can see how I got to this final result. So I'm going to throw the camera around and I'm going to just narrate and take you on a big walk around. So here we go. So the first thing that I think we should look at is the trailer. When I first got this, the trailer was not in as nice a condition as it looks now. It was pretty rusty and, you know, just a little worse for wear. It's not perfect now, but what I did do is I ground off all the rust and just repainted it basically. But that's not all I did. That is a brand new, I think it's Dutton and Lawson or Dutton and Lanson winch. So the winch that was on there was way underpowered and was really hard to winch the boat up, to be honest. So that was new. I fixed up the lighting. I didn't do anything. The coupler was okay, but I did have to fix the electrical. There's some new Seadoo logos that I cut on my handy dandy Cricut vinyl cutter. The main thing that I did on this trailer, aside from paint my rims a groovy you know, metallic silver, is I got a whole new axle, which I'm not going to do an axle review, but that's a brand new 3,500 pound axle with brand new hubs. And the reason I got that is because on one of my very first long trips, unbeknownst to me, my hubs were in terrible shape, and being a newbie to the boating world, I didn't know to spend any time or energy looking at them, and one of my hubs flat out blowed up, and my wheel didn't come off, but it did dig into the spindle of the axle and basically wrecked it. So there was no fixing that. So I had to get a whole new axle, which I did. That was like one of the first things I did with this boat. A little bit of the learning by fire type of learning. So anyway, I did that. Down here at the jet pump area, I didn't do much. What I have done is I took the reverse bucket off and took the venturi off and got into the nose cone, and took the nose cone off because I wanted to inspect the grease that was in there to make sure, A, that there was grease, and B, that it was in good shape. And I'm kind of glad I did, because A, there was not as much I think there should have been, and B, it was starting to break down. There was no water in there, which is good, but it was actually starting to like kind of break down and separate. So that was, I'm glad I did that. So it was not a super hard job. But one thing I can say, I don't know if you can see it, but see these bolts right there, right where my finger is? Those are there's 4 of those that hold the venturi on, and they were basically seized. So I had to not break them off, but by the time I got them off using a whole bunch of, you know, kind of manhandly kind of things, they were wrecked, and I wasn't going to put them back on. So I had to buy new ones, which is not a big deal. The only big deal is they were like $14 each. That was a bit of a big deal. But other than that, I was able to order them from my local power sport place, and that was no big deal. And while I had this off, I painted it, so it's nice and nice and bright. I only painted it just to kind of cover up some of the corrosion that was here. It's probably this paint probably won't last, but in the meantime, it was good. So, and then the other thing you'll see here is the jet boat pilot thrust vector fins. And these, if you don't know, these are for low power steering, and they make a gigantic difference in how well this thing handles at low power. Without these, you're basically just, floating, and you have to give it some thrust to move the boat left or right, and it's really tricky to do at low speeds, and especially when you're in a tight area around a dock or other boats. I found it really super nerve-wracking. These were about $300 Canadian by the time I got them here, and these they're spring-loaded. So right now the bucket is in neutral, so this is kind of half down. When it's all the way up in forward, these, when you start going in the water pushes these up, and it pushes them up all the way. So they're basically right out of the way of the nozzle, and it's like they're not even there when you're going. And as soon as you slow down, they fall back in the water, and then they become a rudder. And the difference is, all I can tell you is like a 500% better night and day. Having those on there make this boat really, really, I will say, kind of dreamy in terms of maneuverability around docks. Not having them there, it's a bit of a nightmare around the docks. And people say, oh, you'd get used to it, you just haven't practiced enough. But I think no matter how hard you practice, there's only so much you can do with a jet at really low speeds. It's hard to do, or in some cases impossible. With these on there, there's some things that you can't do that you can do at low speeds. And just in general, it is so much more maneuverable at low speeds, going down canals in no wake zones, and really around docks, so much easier to back out and come in, especially when you're trying to put the boat on the trailer. If you're trying to load it on and you're going to come in, if you're going to actually drive it onto the trailer, that makes a huge difference. But anyway, that's my jet pump story, and that's the work I did on it. Early in my career of jet boating, I hit some rocks. It wasn't really my fault. They weren't marked, and they were not in an obvious spot, so I didn't feel that stupid. But I did have to do some gel coat repair because I took a bunch of chunks off of the bottom of my boat, right along the keel, and I fixed them. And like the keel guard that you see on there now, which is what I'm showing you. So I installed this keel guard, and it's been on there for about a year now, and it hasn't moved a bit. I put that on after I did the repairs, and I did that just so if I ever did hit rocks again, they're going to hit the keel, and I figured these might save the keel from getting chunked out of it, so I wouldn't have to do a repair again as readily. Anyway, I know they're not going to save the boat if it hits a rock, but it might. If I don't do it at high speeds, it just might protect the bottom a bit. So the big project on the outside of this boat, we're taking off the old graphics. I'll throw up a graphic of what this boat looked like the day I bought it compared to what it looks like right now as I'm shooting this. But I took all those old graphics off, wet sanded this entire boat, basically from the waterline up, and then compounded it and buffed it and polished it and got it, really brought the gel coat back to a much better state of affair. It's kind of dirty right now. I just got this out of storage. But I then put on this vinyl wrap graphic, which I made myself using knifeless tape and a whole lot of making it up as I go. And I created this graphic, and then that pinstripe I put on, that's just automotive pinstripe. But this right here is 3M, I think it's 1080, I think it's called, vinyl. And like I said, I used knifeless tape, or the 3M knifeless tape, to create this shape. And then this graphic right here the Seadoo logo and the groovy stripe and the 180 CS there. I had a friend of mine who does this for a living, create that for me and do that, because that was beyond the scope of my Cricut cutter. I couldn't do that. And then I created this back little graphic, and the story goes, originally this graphic was supposed to be over here, and that's how it was supposed to look. I was basically copying another design that I had seen online, and that's how we were going to do it. And then the day that my friend came with those graphics, I'm going to walk you around to the other side, to put them on, he realized that the fuel vent is right in the way of where it should go. So he made a bit of an executive decision and he moved it down, and I didn't like it, and because this wasn't here. And anyway, when he finished, I'm going to back up here so you can see this. So he put it on like that, and like just looking at it like this, it looked okay, but when he looked at the whole boat, it looked wrong to me. So I quickly created this second little graphic to kind of tie this all in, and I think it worked. So I did that. So that was the big thing. You can see here I've got a little mark there and a little mark there. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to try and fix those. Anyway, I knew this vinyl would not last forever, but it has held up. This is a whole season worth of use, and my guess is that this probably got done driving, not on the water. So, because what's on the water is going to do that. That's probably a rock probably did that. And other than that, there we got new tires. These are Carlisle radial tires. They had bias ply, older bias ply tires on there before, and I don't know if these feel any better on the road, but apparently they're better for highway driving, which is mostly what I do. And then one more thing on the outside right here is this mat I bought. This is just eBay China knockoff type boat flooring. It's the EVA foam, and I created a template here using construction paper, and then just laid it on top of the EVA foam that I bought in a roll, and cut it out with an X-Acto knife and stuck it on. So that was just that, and I did this step as well, and then I'll show you in a minute when we go inside. I did a few other little things on the inside. So let me get inside and I'll show you that. Okay, here we are up in the cockpit, and I'm just looking out the back here just to show you. So my middle seat, I took the cushion out of there because we were always moving it, because that's where you step a lot of the time to get in, and I don't often have more than 4 people in the boat anyway. So I put the mat here, which is a little nicer, and I put a little step up here at the top. Now I will show you, let's start here. One of the big projects I did in the boat is what anyone will tell you about a jet boat is they're pretty noisy. They're loud, and so the one thing that you can do is you can add this special insulation. It's called Kill Mat, and this is automotive insulation that automotive guys put in the cars to create just a better acoustic situation in the car, where it lowers the amount of engine noise in the cockpit. So what I've done is, I did a whole video on it, but it was, like I say, it was kind of boring. But I took off that foam and I installed Kill Mat all along the underside of that panel, and then put the foam back on. And then I put the Kill Mat also in here, same on this side. And I also did the Kill Mat in here as well, if I'm not mistaken. I might be. Nope, I did it on inside there. So basically inside all the openings of my engine compartment, and same on that one over there. And it made a pretty big difference. And I am going to try to, let's see, I'm going to put you upside down right along the inside here. I'm going to do that this season because I've got a bunch left over, and that made it made a big difference in how loud this thing was when it was running. So it was a nice difference. Another thing that I did, anybody who owns a Challenger and has carpet in it has this problem. And you don't see this problem because I've fixed it. But carpet used to run from here. There used to be a little tiny strip that ran up to here. There. So it ran right along here. And that stupid little piece always moved over and got caught every time you opened up this center door in the floor, which is, you know, a great, let me just lean down here and open it up. Hold on a sec. There we go. So like, there's tons of storage in there. Like I keep all my heck of the bumpers and my, you know, my paddles and my boat hook and my manual bilge pump. And I made that, see that little wooden grid thing down there? That is there because there's always water that settles in the bottom. In fact, you can see some, I don't know if you can see it in there. There's a little bit in there, it's just rainwater that gets in the bottom of this boat. So if you don't have something on the bottom, everything sits in water and it gets gross. So I built that little thing out of IKEA, like leftover IKEA slats that I had. And that's just there so everything sits up off the floor. Just a small little hack. But every time you used to close this, down there at the far end where the carpet used to get over there, it would get stuck. It would hit the carpet. And then the carpet would get frayed. And it just looked crappy. So I hemmed and hawed, and finally I said, you know what, I'm just going to cut it off, and then I'm going to just bust out the sewing machine, and you can see there's some serious hacking sewing job. But you can see that I just sewed the binding on around there, and you know what, it's perfect. Because otherwise this carpet was in pretty good shape. And you can see right here, it's kind of doing the same thing. See how it's this door hits that, so you have to be careful. The carpet shrinks a little. That's the bad thing about the carpet. And you can see I also had some leftover floor mat that I put there. The other thing that I did in here is this blue pillow cushion is the cushion from the back step that I showed you earlier, and we always had it off and we always had it in the car and out of the way. And one day we were getting sick of moving it around, and we didn't have the lounge piece that went here. It didn't come with the boat. So I went to Home Depot, and for $7 I bought this dowel, a 1/2-inch dowel, which fits perfectly in there. I just cut it to size. And then I cut a couple pieces of wood, which are not shown here, and they sit on top of this with a little screw that holds it in place. And then this sits on top, and now we have the sun deck. With the wood, this sits a little higher, but it's fine. And then when it's not in use, let me see if I can do this. When I'm not using it, I take this one out, and this fits under here. Hold on, stand by. Let me get it in there. This fits. Check that out, gone. And then all I have to do is get rid of these, put them away in one of these, and so when I don't want the sun deck, voila, no sun deck. And that pillow is in there, and the only other thing I keep in there, other than the pillow, is the anchor. So we almost never take this cushion off. These ones we do because there's storage underneath these guys, and they're not hinged, so these ones you have to be able to get on and off. But in general, this front space is in good shape, and you'll see I have a little bit of pink fungus stuff. I've had that for a year though. It hasn't gotten worse, so I haven't worried about it. But in general, my seats are in pretty good shape. These are not original seat covers. These are, I guess, the second set at least, but they're in really good shape, and I haven't cleaned them yet, so they're in good shape. My windshield's in good shape. There's a look back, and here on my main seat, you say, what is that? Well, it's my little bolster, because one of the big problems with this boat is when you're sitting down, you're really sitting low, and when you're docking or doing anything, you're not sitting high enough. So then you'd always, get your foot underneath your bum, and it's not very comfortable. So I bought these bolster buddies, but when I bought them, there's two of them, and they're one on top of the other, but they were square, not like half moon, and that's why this looks a little hacked up. So what I did is I tried to sell them, couldn't sell them, so I cut them. And where's the sewing I did? Anyway, I did some sewing. I guess it's right there, and there. I'm not a very good sewer, but I cut the foam into a half moon size, so now they kind of sit into the clam back there. Same on this side, and you sit up at a really nice height. So that was my little hack that I did. So that works out great, and that's marine vinyl, and they float, so it's great. And the only other thing I did here on the dash is I cleaned with steel wool and like 1000 grit sandpaper all these gauges, so that the displays are nice and clear. They were all fogged up and worn out. They looked terrible. And then I just added in the phone holder because I use my phone for navigation, and speedometers, because the speedometer here is so bad at how it works. And that is about the only thing. The only other thing, I've got my cover still half on here, so hold on, let me get that out of the way. And in my glove box, which has the original feels like 1980, but it's 2006 stereo, which was terrible. All I did is took the accessory port, and it wasn't working. I had no power at my accessory port, and I could not figure it out. Believe me, I spent hours trying to figure out why the power wasn't going there. No fuses, grounding issues. I couldn't figure it out. And in the end, I just took the power from the stereo, which I never used, and hooked up the accessory port. And the only thing I use the accessory port for is that, which is my USB port. And it also shows me the voltage of my battery. So if I'm ever wondering how many volts I've got going in my battery, that does it. So that is a look, I think, at all of the things that I did on my Seadoo Challenger. These are homemade poles that I use for my dock covers to keep them up, so that the water runs off them. And then when I have when I have it on the trailer and I'm storing it, which I do, out of the water, I put the dock covers on, and then I put the travel cover over top of it with these there and here, and they keep the cover TP'd enough that the water runs right off, and it keeps the boat really nice and dry. So that is a bit of a wrap up of all of the things that I've done on this boat so far. Okay, so just to wrap up, the Seadoo Challenger 180, this is my first ever boat. Bought it in 2011, right in the middle of COVID, and it was $18,000 Canadian, which at the time I knew was $3,000 or $4,000, maybe even $5,000 overpriced. But in the middle of COVID, I wanted a boat for personal reasons, and I knew I was overpaying, but I wanted to get it anyway. So I got it. It's been fantastic. I will say, for 2 or 3 people in the boat, it's awesome. It's fast, it's super sporty, very maneuverable, and it's a lot of fun to drive, and it's not hard to get around on the trailer, and not difficult to to operate. For any amount of people more than that, if you're going to try and put 5 people, 6 people in this boat, unless 2 or 3 of them are little kids, it gets kind of sluggish, and it is a little bit. It's not great with 5 or 6 people in it. To be honest, it's just not quite enough power. With 2 or 3 people, it's excellent. So that's my kind of disclaimer of what it's good for. 2 or 3 people plus the driver, fantastic. 2 people pulling someone on a tube, it's really a lot of fun. It's a great boat for up to 4 people, say. Above that, it gets kind of sluggish and doesn't handle very well, and it's not super powerful above that level. But with the lower number of people in it, it's a ton of fun to drive. So I would definitely recommend it. Now, this version of the Challenger was out from 2005 until 2012 when Seadoo stopped making boats altogether. And this version of it has the 4-stroke Rotax motor in it, and I think you can buy one of these today for about the same price as I paid, you know, $15,000 to $20,000. And for that money, I think if you can find one in good shape, this one was in exceptionally good shape, had a lot of hours, but it's obviously been well taken care of. This boat has been fantastic. And the only thing that's you need to worry about are finding not motor parts, because it's still using the same motor as the jet skis, which are currently in production from Seadoo, but boat parts, you know, like parts of the windshield, shifters, things like that. Things that are proprietary to the boat, not like things like steering cables, things like that you can still get, and bolts and all those types of things you can still get. But there are a few things that are kind of hard to get. So if you have one in crappy shape that has a whole bunch of things that are breaking on it, then that might be a problem. But if you've got one like this that's in great shape and doesn't have things that are breaking, for under $20,000, it's a ton of boat, because anything else newer on the market, anything new is going to be $50,000, $60,000 or more. So this at under 20 is, I think, one of the biggest bargains going in terms of fun, inexpensive sport boats. Certainly a $100,000 sport boat is nicer, more powerful, and more agile than this, but it's also 5 times the price. So there it is. For what it's worth, I'm a big fan of this boat, the Seadoo Challenger 180. Hope that helped anyone who might be thinking about getting one, or someone who has one and was thinking about some ideas. I'm always happy to answer questions. If you have them, post them, and I'll get back to them eventually. And you know, maybe I can help you with your project or something that you might be thinking about getting. Anyway, thanks for watching.